Welcome back friends to another session of finite element methods for fluid dynamics. So now we are going to apply the finite element method that we have learned to flow equations. So we will first begin with incompressible flows. So when we talk about incompressible flows, we have a choice of several variables. For example, we could do it in the primitive variables like the velocity and pressure, or we could do it in some kind of derived variables such as vorticity and stream function, which is here denoted by omega and psi. We are going to talk about primitive variables in this session. So the various issues that come to mind in these calculations are the stability of the numerical method to the calculations, of course its accuracy, then what is the computational effort, the resources that we require, the boundary conditions, how do we handle them, and of course a very important factor is we would like the method to be extensible to 3 dimensions. So if we work in the primitive variables, they automatically get extended to 3 dimensions without any problem at all. So let us first look at the equations that govern the incompressible flows. So let omega be a domain, the spatial domain, and NSD is the number of spatial dimensions. Time domain is 0 to capital T, and let us say gamma is the boundary of omega, just like we have done in the rest of the course. So the flow equations are governed by essentially 2 balance laws, the mass balance, which over here is equation number 2, and then the momentum balance or the force balance, which is given by equation number 1. So we are going to use these variables. Rho is the density of the fluid, which is of course given to us. This is an incompressible flow. U is going to denote the velocity, and sigma is the stress. F is the body force. So the first equation, which is written over here, says that I have the inertial forces, the unsteadiness in the velocity field, the local acceleration, then the convective term, the u dot gradient u, and then that balances the divergence of the stress sigma, and of course the body force, which is given by F. The second equation here is the incompressibility constraint, that at each time instant my velocity should satisfy this equation. That means it should be divergence free. Now let us look at the stress tensor. So we will assume that this is a Newtonian fluid. So for a Newtonian fluid, we can write the stress tensor into 2 parts. The hydrostatic, there is a pressure, and then the deviatoric part, which we say depends on the symmetric part of the strain rate tensor. So mu is the coefficient of viscosity, P is the pressure, and the gradient of u denotes the strain rate tensor. And if we look at the symmetric part of it, so we have taken the transpose of that and taken the average of the 2. So that is the symmetric part. So the stress tensor now has 2 parts, and the divergence of stress tensor is what appears in the balance law. We are going to have 2 kinds of boundary conditions. We could either have a situation where the boundary condition is on the velocity field, so that is on the gamma g. We could also have a boundary condition in terms of the Neumann condition on the stress, okay, on the velocity field. So we could specify that the stress at a certain part of the boundary is, so we could have either a stress free condition, or we could specify a stress, and so on. And together with that we have a initial condition. So u could be specified at the time instant 0, and we assume that that also satisfies the continuity equation, so it is divergence free. Now what I would like you to kind of observe is that in this equations you will notice that my velocity terms are second order, but the pressure terms are only first order. Okay, so that's first observation that I would like you to make. The second is that the pressure term here, which actually is embedded inside the sigma, there is no time derivative of the pressure. So, in that sense there is no equation that kind of shows us the evolution of pressure. Okay? And therefore, what these equations are telling us is that typically the first equation is the evolution equation for the velocity, and this condition 2, the incompressibility constraint, will determine the pressure. Okay, so so the pressure variable is a little bit strange in incompressible flow, in the sense that it is not a thermodynamic variable, but it must adjust at every time instant, so that my velocity field is divergence free and that incompressibility constraint is satisfied. So, this already tells you that the interpolation functions that we use for velocity and pressure, there is going to be some kind of a challenge. Okay. Velocity term is second order, pressure is going to be first order. So, already we know that there must be some the velocity should be a higher order interpolation than pressure. So, we will talk about this more in the next few slides. So, let us revisit now what are the challenges that we have in solving these flow equations. So, first of all, if I have a high Reynolds number, then the problem is advection dominated, okay? And we have already seen that the Galerkin method would lead to large node to node oscillations, and we would have to stabilize it. Of course, the other way is that we keep our Peclet number, the mesh Peclet number, less than 1, which means as we go to higher Reynolds number, we keep refining our mesh. That of course is very impractical, as you know, because if I am solving, let us say, flow past an aircraft, it would be almost impossible to have such a fine grid at millions of Reynolds number that my grid Peclet number is less than 1. So, we will use some kind of stabilization upwinding methods, which we have already talked about. In addition to that, the advection term is nonlinear. Okay, so we will have to use things like the Newton-Raphson method to handle the nonlinearity. The third problem that we might have is related to the incompressibility constraint, because it may lead to pressure oscillations. Okay. So, notice that the incompressibility constraint requires the divergence of u should be 0 at every time instant, and these act like constraint equations in the sense that we may not be able to have all combinations of velocity and pressure interpolations that may work. Okay. Some combinations will work and some will not work. So, if I try to use equal order interpolation, that means I make a grid where the velocity node and the pressure nodes, they lie on top of each other, so they are identical. That for sure does not work, because as we have already realized that the velocity is second order and pressure is only first order, and moreover these equations act like constraint equations. So, not all combinations of velocity and pressure, they will work, and this is governed by a condition called the LBB, given by Professors Babushka and Bredzi, and this is beyond the scope of this course. You can read up a little bit more about this, but essentially what it says is that there are some elements that satisfy this condition and you can use them. For example, you could have quadratic velocity and linear pressure. Okay, so if I use quadrilaterals, then if I use 9 noded quadratic elements in 2 dimensions, but my velocity but my pressure is only linear. Okay, so I use triangles for pressure which are embedded inside my velocity elements. So that element satisfies Babushka-Bredzi condition. There are many others that also satisfy, but there are many more which do not satisfy. So that one has to keep in mind, and one way of looking at it is to look at the constraint ratio. So let us define the number of equations for the velocity and number of equations for the pressure. So, if I take the ratio of the two and call it R, so NC is in the denominator, that is the number of constraint equations, and NEQ is the number of velocity equations. Ideally in 2 dimensions, I would like it to be 2. Ideally in 2 dimensions, we would like it to be exactly equal to 2, and these have to account for equations after you have taken care of the boundary conditions. Okay. Usually, if you have this ratio R which is less than 1, then it would lead to some kind of severe pressure oscillations. But if you have R greater than 2, that means you have more velocity equations than pressure equations. That means you are not giving enough weightage to the incompressibility constraint, and thereby you would not be able to satisfy the mass balance to the extent that you would like. This would typically become very important where mass conservation would be one of the driving forces. For example, if you are looking at sloshing inside a tank, okay, and you would like the mass of the liquid to be conserved, or for example you are looking at bubbles falling through another fluid, then you would like to maintain the mass of the fluid inside the bubble as it kind of moves along. So, therefore, there has to be a situation where your mass balance is satisfied adequately. So, ideally we would like elements which give us R exactly equal to 2, but if that is not the case, you could either get pressure oscillations or you could get loss of mass. So, with that in mind, we will just keep an idea that there are some elements that satisfy the Babushka-Bresy condition, and those you can use easily. But suppose you want to use elements which do not, then one has to resort to some kind of stabilization. So, just like we use the SUPG for stabilizing the formulation against instabilities due to advection, we can also use some kind of stabilization to basically get rid of the oscillations in the pressure field. So, once we use those stabilizations, we can use pretty much every combination of velocity and pressure. So, let us quickly look at the finite element formulation for the incompressible flows. So, let us say we have any L number of elements, and we are going to divide our domain into these element level subdomains as written over here. These are the function spaces for the trial functions, and then what is listed here are the function spaces for the weights. And in fact, what you will notice is there is a set of a pair for each one. So, the first line over here shows the solution space for the velocity field. So, the usual that we have studied. So, they belong to this class H1 and they satisfy the Dirichlet boundary condition. The pressure, as you will notice, also belongs to the class H1, but there are no boundary conditions as such on pressure. We usually use the Neumann type of conditions on stress, and that stress is a combination of the strain rate and the pressure. The weight function space, just like we have seen before, so for the velocity field it belongs to H1, and then at the place on gamma g where we have the Dirichlet boundary condition, the velocity weight function must go to 0 on those places, and likewise we have the definition for the weight function space for pressure. So, once we have these function spaces, then we do exactly what we have done for the other equations. We use the Galerkin formulation, integrate the sum of the terms by parts where we have a second derivative. So, in this case the stress term would be integrated by parts, and then to stabilize the formulation we would add some kind of element level matrices, which I am going to explain you in a moment. So, in this equation which is actually the finite element formulation, for the incompressible flows. The green terms are the Galerkin terms. So, let us first go through them. So, W is my weight function, and you can see that the first term is the time evolution term for the velocity, then I have the advection term, and then I have the body force. And as far as my stress term is concerned, I have actually integrated that by parts. Okay. So, the original term was divergence of sigma, and what we have done is we have actually integrated by parts. So, now we have the symmetric part of the gradient of the W, okay, the weight function, and that hits this stress tensor. And then the boundary term resulting from this is written over here on the right hand side. Okay. And the last term here in the green is actually the Galerkin term for the pressure. So, you can see Q is the weight function for the pressure, and divergence U of H equal to 0 is actually the incompressibility constraint. So, therefore, the green terms are the Galerkin terms for the flow equations, both the velocity equation, that means the force balance, and then also for the mass balance, which is simply divergence U equal to 0. To that we add two sets of terms. Okay. So, the first set of terms we already know, which is the SUPG terms. So, this I hope you will be able to identify. So, U dot gradient of W kind of multiplies the entire equation, the momentum equation. So, you can see that in the square brackets the momentum equation has been reproduced. Okay. And so, this is the residual of the momentum equation, and that we are hitting with the SUPG term, which is U dot gradient of W. And tau of course is a stabilization coefficient, and the rhos, the density has been taken care of to kind of make for the dimensions. The second term here is actually the term that would stabilize the pressure. So, again this is the residual. So, it is a consistent formulation because we are using all the stabilization terms on the residual, but you will notice that this is gradient of Q, which is the weight function of the pressure. So, just like we have U dot gradient W, for the pressure we are using a term called tau times gradient of Q, and again the whole residual. So, this term would actually enable us to get rid of the oscillations because of pressure. The term in the blue is actually another stabilization term which arises from the least squares of the continuity equation. So, notice the continuity equation is divergence of U, and if I minimize the square of that and then take the variation, so I am going to get so this is the stabilization coefficient delta, and then divergence of W times divergence of U. So, this term is useful for high Reynolds number. You actually do not need this at low Reynolds number, but if you go to very high Reynolds number, this stabilization term, experience shows, is very useful. It has many other interpretations also, but this being an introductory course, I will refrain from saying anything more, but you are of course feel free to find this out for more research papers. Okay, some remarks about the formulation that we just saw. So, I already showed you that the green terms were the Galerkin terms, and the terms that involve the element level integrals, they are actually the stabilization terms, and we can do stabilization in many ways, but what I showed you in this is via the Galerkin's least square. And in fact, we already saw that the terms here were the SUPG, then the PSPG, which is the pressure stabilization Petrov-Galerkin, and then a least squares on the continuity. Once you write this formulation, you are now free to use any interpolation combination for velocity and pressure. For example, the most convenient would be that both velocity and pressure should be interpolated using the same function. So, that is what we mean by equal order interpolation. So, this formulation actually allows you to do that, even though it does not satisfy the Babushka-Bredzi condition, but by virtue of this stabilization you can still go ahead and use it. Okay. So elements that do not satisfy Babushka-Bredzi can now be used if you stabilize your calculations in the way that is prescribed, or some equivalent ways that may exist otherwise. So we have been able to see already that these formulation also give us the stability for the advection operator, and because they are residual based, they are consistent in the sense that exact solution would still satisfy the formulation that we have proposed.